Hi there, this is Floating in Books. Today I want to share with you my 5 Gothic reads that I would recommend, 5 I don't recommend, and 5 that are on my TBR. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I am really into my Gothic-y sort of reading list. So I was like, you know what? I think I want to share some Gothic fiction again for you guys because I haven't done that in a while. And I've read some more things in recent years and maybe I can update you on that. So that's what we're doing today. If my audio sounds a bit weird, my microphone died as I was filming another video. So I don't have time to wait for that to charge before so if the audio is weird, I do apologize. So 5 books that I want to recommend to you guys. That's what we're going to start off with. Then 5 books that I've read that I see a lot of people recommend or that I think people might want to recommend if you want to get into this genre, but that I don't think are worth your time. And then 5 that I'm excited to read. That's sort of what we're getting into. I say 5 books that I want to recommend, but it's actually 6, but one of them I don't have as a physical copy. So that's just going to be here as an honorable mention, and that is Diavola. I think that's how you say it. I don't remember the name of the author. It's on my e-reader and my e-reader's battery is dead, so it's a bit difficult to look up. But I read it last year and it was actually really enjoyable. It's sort of like a ghost sort of story. That is not necessarily, though, what Gothic fiction is. I've done other videos in the past where I've explained what Gothic fiction is, and Gothic fiction is about eerie fiction. It's sort of like the feeling, like you get this feeling in the pit of your stomach that something isn't quite right, but it doesn't necessarily have to be scary. So there is a difference there for sure. So that's a distinction I do want to point out here again, that Gothic fiction isn't just like a horror novel or anything like that, even though I think there are a couple here that would be classified as horror novels, but those were ones that I didn't even really enjoy. I like the eerie, the sort of like unexplainable gray sort of area. That's what I enjoy. So that's what most of these are as well. If you don't know about Diavola, it's a story of a main character who lives in New York, I think, and then her family decides to travel to Italy, and she joins them for the ride, and she's sort of like the odd person out, and there's something going on in the house they're staying in Italy, and she doesn't quite grasp it. And then once she goes home, this like weird feeling sort of follows her, and then she like needs to go back the next year and like solve things for herself. It was a fun one. It was unexpected. I had heard quite a bit of buzz about this book, but I really felt like a lot of people were selling it as just a ghost story, but there was so much more going on underneath the surface between this main character and her family. She did become a little bit annoying after a while to read from her perspective, but that was the only reason why I knocked it down a star, I think. Other than that, that was like a 4-star read for me, which for me, 4 stars are really good books. I rarely give 5 stars, not because I don't want to give 5 stars just because I enjoy it. 5-star to me needs to be a life-changing book, and those are rare to find, I find. So that's why, even if I enjoy a book, it can only still be a 3-star read. You do need to know that about me. Let me start with the other books then that I have on this pile. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book really put this author on the map for me. I've now read several of her other books and I really enjoy them. There's always a Mexican element in them, and I feel that the Mexican Gothic of the title is a little bit on the nose. But I do really like this. This is a lady who's going to visit her cousin, niece, I don't remember, but a family member who's married into this weird, very rich family, and she, like nobody's really knows what's going on, but she seems unhappy, this family member, in her writing. So that's why she's like, I'm gonna investigate. And then she very quickly becomes part of the plot. This has everything I love about the Gothic story. It's eerie for a very long time. You don't know exactly what's going on, yet there's this really good, satisfying revelation at the end, at least I felt. And this is why this author was like put on the map for me. It was like, right, this person can really write what I like, which is these like gray characters that make questionable choices, but at the same time, there's something eerie and supernatural going on that leaves you questioning everything as you're reading the book. Those are my favorites, and that's why this one had to get a mention. Because I love this book so much, I'm now actually currently reading another book by the same author. This is Stuart Turton's. This is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I believe in other countries it's called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. But this is really, really fun. It's dark and eerie in the sense that you don't really know what's going on for a very long time. But essentially, the main character wakes up in a different body every single day, and at the end of the day, right around the stroke of midnight, the name in the title, Evelyn Hardcastle, dies. And the main character has to figure out why she dies and who kills her. But what we don't know is that there's sort of like, almost like there's a subplot there that makes it a little bit more eerie than just this sort of like detective, almost Agatha Christie, and then there were none kind of situation. Some of the perspectives we get from the main character whose body they're in makes it super interesting. Some of the other characters aren't that interesting, and this character just never knows when they're going to wake up in what body. Like, they just know they're going to wake up in someone else's body. But the fact that there's a little bit more going on, and that solving this mystery is a little bit more important than you might guess just by reading the blurb, was what sold the story to me. And you need to read the book for that to be found out. But yeah, I'm currently reading The Devil in the Dark Water, which is by the same author for that reason. That's a book I've had on my shelf for quite some time. And I started reading it like about a week ago, and I instantly did like 150 pages in like 2 sittings. I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be good if a book does that. So I can't wait to know what that story is all about, and if it's also a little bit of a hint of gothicness like the other story had. I love me some Daphne du Maurier. I did read Jamaica Inn. One of the other books by this author is on my TBR because I love this so much that I just need to get around to at least to reading one of the biggest classics by this author, which is Rebecca. But Jamaica Inn I really liked. It has a Wuthering Heights sort of aspect to it, where our main character goes wandering in this like swampy sort of area that's kind of like grungy, and she doesn't really know what's going on. But Jamaica Inn is the name of the bar or pub that the main character's uncle and aunt run. So what happens is this girl, her mother dies, she has to move in with her aunt and uncle, and it's very clear very quickly that there's something going on in this pub that nobody wants her to know about, and she feels very lonely. She goes wandering the surroundings of this pub, like walking over to the next village, and then things start moving from there. This is fast-paced. It's really, really well written. It gives you the Gothic elements. It's very, like, I make the comparison with Wuthering Heights because of this sort of, it's set in Cornwall, so it's a very different surroundings, but the way the surroundings are described is very similar to the sort of feeling we get of the moors in Wuthering Heights. And at the same time, this book was written in the 1930s, but it's set in the late 19th century. So around the same time that we also get like Wuthering Heights sort of things. So I think Daphne du Maurier did that deliberately. But yeah, I like this a lot. I really enjoyed this. So that's why I need to get to some more Daphne du Maurier for sure. Another book that I would recommend is reading Rouge, especially if, like me, you're into skincare and makeup. This book kind of explores in a very gothic way the sort of toxic relationship that with beauty and beauty standards. This is a main character whose mother has passed away, and she very quickly realizes that her mother was part of this like cult-like organization that kind of sold skincare and beauty products with the promise of looking better. And then she becomes involved in this cult as well and starts to explore it from like the inside out of what was going on. And it's sort of like, what if beauty has an evil side? And it was really, it was a really good read. I very much enjoyed this book. And yeah, it's weird, it's gloomy. The cult-like aspect of it is really, really interesting as well. But at the same time, like, it's just social critique of like the beauty industry and how things work at the same time. So there is a lot of subtext here that you can also explore. So it's a book you can read in multiple ways, and I really enjoyed that. And finally, I keep recommending this, I think, in every single Gothic fiction story recommendation video that I do, or historical fiction, really, but this is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, and this is a book I don't hear enough people talking about. It's a big boy. I think it's like 800 pages or something like that. Yeah, over 700. Not quite 8, but 700. And this is a sort of diary entry kind of story where the main character writes about her journeys with her dad when she was a child up until adulthood. And what you figure out quite quickly is that her dad has passed away, and he was abducted in the same way as his PhD mentor. And that's the reason for their trips, because from when she's a little girl onwards, her dad is trying to find out what happened to his PhD mentor. So they're taking all these trips around Europe, trying to find out what's going on. And at the same time, there's a lot going on. So it's sort of like historical fiction. There's a travel aspect here. But the Gothic element is the reason for the abductions and sort of her dad going missing in the same way. So there's that. That's all I'm going to say. The Historian in the title refers to everything that's behind it. So that's something I'm not going to tell you a little bit more about. Yeah, this was a great read. Yes, it's a hefty one, but it's very, very rewarding and satisfying in the end. So this is one that if you like all of those things, like a little bit of a detective element, a little bit of like the travel aspect, a little bit of the historical fiction kind of stuff, and you want it to be Gothic fiction, then this is one I would recommend. Then I have 5 books for you that I would say, stay away. These are either books that I read because I thought they could be good Gothic-inspired fiction, or because I see a lot of people recommending it on, for instance, Book Talk, as being a really great Gothic fiction read. And the one that puzzles me the most, that I see on a lot of people's list, is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. This is a historical romance novel. This is not Gothic fiction. The Essex Serpent in the title and that you read about in the blurb plays hardly any role. It's almost like a scary story that they tell children in this book, but there is nothing going on. It's just 2 main characters that fall in love. So don't be fooled into thinking that this is Gothic fiction, because it is not. I bought this and read this because that's what the blurb on the back promises to give you. But this isn't even entry-level Gothic. It's so far removed away from Gothic that I don't understand why people recommend this. It's a pretty cover, though. That's the only reason why I kept it. More Mona Awat then. Bunny. This was actually the first book that I read, but I liked Rouge a lot better because I felt it was better at doing the social critique than this book was, so that's why I enjoyed it a bit more. Bunny is about a main character who becomes involved with a sorority, girls who she thinks aren't really like her, so she doesn't really understand why they adopt her. And this is one of those classic cases of, do we really know what's going on? That's all I'm going to say about it. But I felt, because I have read other books that follow this same narrative sort of ploy as this book utilizes, to me, I kind of saw the twist coming at the end. So that's why for me, it wasn't as successful. Maybe if you haven't read things like American Psycho, then this book might be the same surprise to you as I had when I read American Psycho. But this to me felt it played out in a very, very similar way, where I felt like, I know what's going on. Already like halfway through this book, I was like, I think that I know what's going to happen. So for me, it wasn't as shocking as to a lot of people. There are some gruesome murders in here, which is why I think a lot of people might think it could be Gothic, but that's what I mean with things don't have to like involve murders or gloomy houses or just these horror story kind of effects for it to be Gothic. There needs to be something else, and I felt this book was also a little bit lacking there. Another author I see a lot of people like recommend in terms of being great for like horror stories is Riley Sager. The only one left is the book I saw recommended a lot, so I picked it up, I read it, and it's okay, but in a sense, it's trying to do what this book does, but this one fails. This one works, this one fails. This also has like a weird mystery at its center. Our main character has like a score to settle with life, you could say, and she ends up being the caretaker of this old lady who lives in this house who everyone in town suspects from being a killer. And because of her own sort of circumstances, our main character ends up in this position that nobody else really wants to do. Yeah, and this is one of those things where I'm like, oh, it could have been so good. Like the setting, it's this house on a cliff, like on the cover, crumbling down, mysteries left, right, and center, but it just, the twist at the end and the way it all came together just felt really cheap. And again, it was very predictable on the one hand, and on the other hand, I felt that the way the story was resolved was the cheapest, easiest cop-out that the author could have chosen. So for me, this was a complete miss. There was a weird focus and obsession in the main character that really didn't work for me. I think that if I had gotten this novel from a different perspective, I would have liked it better. A book that it's just horrible. That's the only thing I can say about it, is Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt. I actually did pick this up from a horror shelf in foils. I mean, it's one of those books that's trying to be shocking for the sake of it being shocking. It just keeps piling on the body horror. And I mean, I'm not easily grossed out with things, but this was just weird for the sake of being weird, I felt. So that's why for me this was a really, really big miss. There's people in here who are obsessed with like parasites and stuff. That's where the brainworms come in. There's someone who's trans who wants to be pregnant, and then there's this cult-like situation. It's very, very, very strange. And it's almost like trying to test the reader for how much you can stand. So this I wouldn't even categorize as gothic, because that gloomy, eerie, je ne sais quoi, I don't know what's going on kind of situation just isn't going on here. It just punches you in the face, telling you exactly what it is, and it doesn't stop giving you, like, it doesn't stop punching you anytime in the story. So if you like that sort of thing, go for it. If you want to be shocked. And then this is A Tempest of Tea. This is actually one of the last books I read. This is Hafsa Faisal, and I bought this because it like promises to be about vampires. So I was like, ooh, a good vampire story. I love those. This is more of like if Gothic fiction could be cozy, it's this. It's about a main character who has a tea room where during the day she serves tea to rich people, and then at night the vampires come out. That's the premise we get on the back of the book, in the blurb, which is what I thought it was going to be. And then it turned into a heist story, which the heist itself was like the least interesting thing about the book. And yet we spend 200 pages of a 300-page book working up towards a heist that isn't a heist. Make it make sense. This had all the bat plotting that you could possibly want. This could have been a lot more interesting. Again, like Riley Sager, what those books don't do really well, that good books do, in my opinion, is to give you hints as the plot continues, and not just like putting all of the twists in the last 50 pages. It's what I feel a lot of modern books tend to do, and I feel like this book and also the Riley Sager, you can see the influence of TikTok almost, and like people having very short attention spans. It's like boom, 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 plot point, plot point, plot point, left, right, center, just to keep the story going. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So this would have been a lot better if it had a little bit more mystery, a little bit more like underlying like is this going on? Is this going on? Is this going on? Like, it could have been a little bit darker and just a little less obvious what was going on. Because I already figured out, like, the major, like, plot, one of the major plot twists at the end of the story. I already figured out, like, halfway through the book. So, and that always annoys me. So those are the books I wouldn't recommend. And then I have a couple of books on my to read pile. Not sure when I'll get round to these. I actually have a different book in my head for my next read, but one of the books on my TBR for 2026 is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. This is by V.E. Schwab. That is one of my favorite authors. I believe this is vampires, as far as I know. This had a lot of hype when it first launched. I don't hear too many people talking about it anymore, though. That could be a bad sign. It could be a good sign. There's just too many books being released. But yeah, it being V.E. Schwab, and it's like a gothic-y kind of thing, made me want to read it. This is a book that I was recommended on one of my previous Gothic Fiction story videos that I've done in the past. Blackwater. This is a set of novellas, short stories, because all the books are about this big, written by Michael McDowell. This is from the 80s, I believe. That's when it was written. And what I didn't know, because I looked up this author, but this author wrote the script to the original Beetlejuice movie. So that kind of gives you the vibe. And this is categorized as Southern Gothic. It's set in the Southern United States, and each book focuses on a different decade. It starts in like the early 1910s, 1920s or so, and then you get a different decade every single time, is what I believe. And it starts with a flood. This little town in the South somewhere floods, and there's something weird happens. This isn't as dark and gloomy yet, but we already, as a reader, get to see certain things that I just know are going to come up in the next couple of novels that I feel are going to be fun, make it gothic, you could say, and therefore fun for me. I've only read the first one so far. It is my aim to read all 6 books this year, so I can't wait to read more of it. But yeah, that's all I know about it, really. So the first book isn't really giving you everything just yet, which I like. This is a book I also see a lot of people recommending as being like a good Gothic fiction. I have this listed as a historical fiction, though. It's The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. And it's giving sort of Rebecca kind of vibes, where this girl is like in this big house, and then there's all these like weird things going on. That's all I know about it. And I believe The Silent Companions it's like dolls or something. That's what I've heard. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, there's a mysterious wooden figure, a silent companion that bears an unsettling resemblance to Elsie herself. I don't know how I'm gonna like that, but I've heard a lot of people saying that this is another good, like, darker, gloomier read as well, and that a lot of people were surprised by this. We'll see. I already mentioned Rebecca. This is something I still need to read. I once started it, but because it starts with her, the main character, being on vacation in the south of France and it being really like sunny and funny and whatever, I did end up watching the movie just to see if I would like the story and where it would go. Of course, movies are never like true to the actual book itself, but it gave me a bit better sense. And a lot of people told me in one of my previous videos when I showed this that I would have to soldier on and get through that part for it to get good. So that's what I've now decided, but I will have to reread it because I haven't read this in years. So I'm going to have to start from scratch. And then this one, I also wanted to read. This is Our Share of Night by Mariana Enrique, I don't know. I believe it's about an order, again, something like cult-like with monsters. That's what I believe this is about, but it also like follows a family through the ages, a bit like the Blackwater series, which is why it's probably such a hefty one. Again, I'm not sure when I'm going to be reading this, but I would like to read this hopefully this year, if not next year. So this is another one that is on my TBR. So those are all the books I wanted to share with you today. My little overview of Gothic fiction, because that's really where my brain is currently going. So I know it's spring and it's not the time to be reading gloomy fiction, But because so many of my 4 and 5-star reads are always in this category, I've just decided that I need to get to my like Gothic fiction shelf ASAP. So thanks so much for watching this video today. I hope you really enjoyed it. I do make 1 video a week on this channel, so check back for more because I have lots more content coming your way on this channel. If you want makeup content, that's on the other channel. That's where I post 4 times a week. So hope to see you whenever, and then hope to see you again in a new video. Bye-bye.